A crucial project nearly collapsed as Joan Miller was ignored by 20 self-assured specialists and their domineering leader, Mr. Matthews. Their arrogance left the team blind to her presence and desperate as mistakes piled up. Joan quietly revealed the answer no expert could find, turning the tide in an instant. You won't believe how quickly injustice unraveled, and how triumph came from the least expected hero. The city was just beginning to wake, the streets still clinging to dawn's lingering hush, but inside the towering glass structure of Keller Sons, life pulsed at full speed. The elevator chimed at every floor, delivering employees dressed in meticulous suits and polished shoes, each one caught in the gravitational pull of urgent schedules and looming deadlines. On the 6th floor, the heart of the planning department, coffee machines buzzed and printers flickered, already churning out the day's first demands. In this hive of constant activity, Joan Miller worked quietly before most of the staff arrived. She moved with gentle efficiency, gathering coffee cups, straightening the chairs that had been left askew in yesterday's rush, and wiping away the faint traces of fingerprints from the meeting room table. It was a rhythm she'd mastered, seldom interrupting, never lingering where she might draw attention. To the team of specialists who filled the floor later in the morning, Joan was barely a part of the scenery. Her uniform marked her as someone peripheral, a necessary presence but not one to be consulted or truly seen. It was not that they disliked her, but in their world of analytics, projections, and boardroom politics, hierarchy was a silent but strict code. Joan's greetings were answered with nods, but rarely with names. Morning sunlight caught on glass walls as the strategists and analysts took their places, only to be met by the lingering anxiety of a project gone awry. Weeks of effort seemed to be unraveling overnight. The numbers in their flagship proposal, one that had the potential to double annual revenue, no longer aligned, and data sets that had once fit together now conflicted without explanation. In meetings, voices sharpened. Some specialists cast pointed glances, others scribbled frantic notes, each trying to dissect the mystery, while subtly proving their own innocence in the looming failure. The air grew heavier each hour as pressure mounted. Contractors were called for extra consultation, and email threads ballooned into storms of blame and speculation. Yet no one thought to step outside the circle of their expertise. As Joan worked, she listened to snatches of conversations about audit trails, security gaps, and legacy spreadsheets, words that echoed from her own past in a different life. Before circumstances had led her here, Joan had known long hours at a desk, her mind deep in numbers, double-checking the logic of every formula. Amid the tense exchanges that filled the main office, Joan maintained a steady presence, her eyes taking in every detail. She remembered the pride and anxiety of managing complicated accounts, the subtle cues that revealed when a system was about to fail. Watching the specialists now, Joan felt a strange combination of empathy and sadness. She saw the way Marcus, the sharpest in the group, covered his stress with sarcasm, and how Clara hid her worry behind constant restless movement. They were all sure that whatever the answer, it lay far above the reach of anyone like the cleaning staff. Yet in the evenings, when quiet reclaimed the floor and most had gone home, Joan moved among the empty desks, pausing to glance at a spreadsheet accidentally left open or a printout discarded in frustration. She noticed how certain numbers repeated, how a pattern emerged that seemed at odds with the department's assumptions. The error was subtle, easy to miss for someone lost in the complexity of corporate formulas, but glaring for a careful set of eyes unburdened by ego. Each day the specialists grew more impatient, closing doors to their conference room discussions and raising their voices in hopes the answer could be forced into the open through willpower alone. Still, none of them acknowledged the silent figure who moved through their chaos, collecting their empty coffee cups and straightening their chairs at dusk. Joan's work was flawless, but her presence was nearly invisible, the perfect backdrop to their unraveling crisis. She could sense the gap growing between those who believed themselves indispensable and those who, through humility and patience, truly saw. And even as the gap widened, Joan kept moving, quietly, steadily, until the night when everything would finally shift. As another week unfolded, the atmosphere in the office thickened with unease. The calendar on the wall marked days that seemed to slip away faster than anyone could catch up. Tension grew more palpable. Conversations shifted from polite problem-solving to muted frustration, whispers echoing through cube walls, the weight of looming failure hanging over every decision. By now, most of the specialists were working overtime, arriving before sunrise or staying long after sunset, desperate to untangle the figures that threatened to derail months of progress. Joan's quiet presence became a comfort in the relentless chaos, though scarcely acknowledged. She'd learned to move almost soundlessly, her hands cleaning, her eyes reading every discarded memo, half-erased number, and confidential post-it note left behind. More than once she paused at Marcus's desk, watching him run his hands through his hair in silent worry. Clara's energy faded. She barely smiled anymore, her usually brisk footsteps slowed by exhaustion, her focus broken by constant setbacks. Joan knew this feeling intimately, the slow erosion of hope that comes when solutions seem out of reach. Memories from her earlier career surfaced, the pressure of balancing ledgers, staying calm as others panicked, and spotting small errors that, if left unchecked, could destroy entire companies. It stirred both empathy and a sense of responsibility. Though she doubted the specialist would ever ask for her help, she felt drawn toward their struggle. One afternoon, thunder rolled outside as rain beat against the glass, muting the world beyond. Inside, the office felt even more removed, less a bustling workplace than an isolated battleground. Joan watched as team leaders huddled around a conference table, littered with laptops, pens, and hastily crumpled pages. The project manager, Mr. Matthews, stared at projections, his confidence eroded by the mysterious discrepancies that remained unresolved. Frustration radiated from him so strongly that Joan, passing by with her cleaning cart, felt it like a cold wind. The specialists tried every strategy they knew, calling in outside consultants, redrafting budgets, even rewriting portions of the code that powered their calculations. Each new solution collapsed almost as quickly as it was proposed. Arguments flared. Some blamed faulty software, others suspected sabotage. But beneath it all was a shared exhaustion, a sense of fighting a battle no one understood, a growing fear that their skills were not enough. Joan continued her rounds, watching the struggle play out. Late at night, she noticed a printout left at Mr. Matthews' desk, the ink smeared by a careless elbow or spilled coffee. As she picked it up, her practiced eyes scanned the data columns. The error was clear. A formula had been copied incorrectly, multiplying figures by the wrong factor and sending the results spiraling out of control. For a moment her heart raced. She recognized the flaw immediately. A simple but catastrophic mistake she had fixed countless times before. Joan stood in the empty office, the lights dimmed and rain still tapping at the windows. Should she say something? The specialists believed themselves above her, judging worth by titles and degrees. Would they even listen? Self-doubt flickered, but so did her sense of duty. She returned the printout to Matthews's desk but hesitated, pondering how to act without causing embarrassment or conflict. Before leaving, she quietly printed several pages explaining the correct formula, adding step-by-step notes that illustrated the solution. She wrote nothing more than, "Review this section," before sliding the pages beneath the project reports on Matthews's desk. Even as she left, her mind reeled with hope and apprehension. Perhaps these specialists, too tired and desperate to argue, would finally see what had eluded them for so long. The next day dawned with hesitant optimism. Matthews was the first to arrive, noticing the unfamiliar papers waiting on his desk. He read through them, confusion turning to recognition, and then astonishment. Could it be so simple? He began recalculating the numbers, slowly, methodically, until the pattern of errors gave way to clarity. At last, the figures aligned. Matthews summoned Marcus and Clara, sharing the discovery. Whispers ricocheted around the office as others gathered, each person struck by the turnaround. For the entire morning, the specialists debated the origin of the corrected formula, wondering who could have solved what none of them could. Marcus found a cleaning slip with Joan's name beside the stack, matching the distinctive notations on the newly printed pages. An unspoken realization passed through the group. Someone they had dismissed, someone quiet and invisible, had quietly rebuilt the foundation of their work. That evening, the energy in the office felt changed. Joan finished cleaning as usual, but when she crossed the main hall, she met eyes with Clara, who for the first time smiled sincerely. Matthews offered a nod not of dismissal, but recognition. It was as if an invisible barrier had fallen, replaced by gratitude and newfound respect. Joan's empathy and careful observation had not only saved the department, but had begun to heal a divide years in the making. In the silent, after-hours glow of the building, Joan understood the value of what she had done. Her journey and theirs was far from over, but for the first time she felt seen not just as the woman who cleaned their offices, but as someone who truly mattered. Across the 6th floor, the revelation caused an extraordinary stir. For days the specialists had moved beneath a cloud of defeat, weighed down by unspoken frustrations and skeptical glances, and now something rare crackled in the air, a mixture of disbelief and anticipation. Whispers bounced off glass partitions, and even the most reserved analysts felt compelled to join impromptu debates over how the breakthrough had materialized overnight. In the early morning, Mr. Matthews positioned himself at the head of the conference table, the stack of corrected documents in front of him. One after another, the members of the project team wandered in, curiosity written across their faces. Marcus picked up the stapled bundle of calculations, his usual skepticism momentarily replaced by awe at the clear, step-by-step notes. Clara flipped through the annotated pages, noticing the careful handwriting and subtle signs of humility in the phrasing. Perhaps consider this adjustment, and it seems the error might be here. As more team members filtered in, Marcus began tracing the papers back to their source. He found a slip of paper attached to the final report, bearing a name he'd seen countless times on checklists but never considered important: Joan Miller. For a moment the room was filled only with the low humming of the air conditioning and the faint ping of an incoming email. Then Clara, always perceptive, put the pieces together and gave voice to everyone's realization. When Matthews calmly asked Joan to join the meeting, the specialist watched her with unguarded curiosity. Joan entered the room hesitantly, sensing the attention but standing with quiet dignity. She did not shrink beneath their gazes. Instead, she waited, giving Matthews the chance to speak first. He thanked her for her work and asked how she'd managed to find their mistake so swiftly when experienced professionals had failed. Joan explained with quiet confidence. She had worked for over a decade as an accountant, spending long nights reviewing spreadsheets much like the ones in front of her. She knew how easy it was for the smallest miscalculation to create chaos. While tidying up, she had spotted an error pattern that was all too familiar from her past. Joan described her thought process without embellishment or pride. Her focus was on clarity, not credit. As Joan spoke, those around the table found themselves reflecting on their own behavior. Marcus remembered with a pang of guilt how he'd once ignored her request to replace a broken printer. Clara recalled a brief exchange about a missing stapler she'd not bothered to acknowledge. Now, listening to Joan's steady voice, both specialists realized how thoroughly they'd underestimated her, how quickly they'd dismissed someone who navigated the world outside their narrow scope. The atmosphere in the room softened. Clara was the first to speak, her tone sincere as she thanked Joan not just for solving the problem, but for her patience and courage in coming forward. Others chimed in, asking about Joan's past, what brought her to Keller Sons, and how she had coped with the transition from her former career to her role as cleaning staff. The conversation was honest, open, and unlike any before deeply respectful. Matthews, understanding the significance of Joan's contribution, asked if she would be willing to sit in during future problem-solving sessions. Marcus volunteered to mentor her in analytics programs, and Clara suggested she share her perspective on other ongoing projects. Her attention to detail might be the vital element they'd been missing. As the workday continued, the old barriers seemed to dissolve. Joan's presence was no longer inconspicuous. She now moved through the office with a quiet confidence, greeted by genuine smiles and thoughtful conversation. The specialists stopped seeing her as a nameless function and began to seek her out for insight, for encouragement, and even for a sense of reality that had been missing beneath layers of stress. The impact was lasting. Emails from Joan were read with interest. Her perspective became a regular part of team meetings, and Matthews ensured her name was mentioned in project documentation. A culture shift spread through the company. People from other departments soon learned about the miracle on the 6th floor, the story of how humility, perseverance, and unseen experience had quietly rescued an entire division. In moments of doubt, Marcus would point to Joan as proof that greatness often went unseen until given a chance to shine. Clara, renewed in her dedication, started encouraging broader participation from everyone, regardless of role or status. And Joan, who had once finished her days unnoticed and unheard, now looked forward to each morning, her sense of belonging finally secure. The lesson of her victory, one built on quiet resilience and earned respect, would shape the culture of Keller Sons for years to come. The turning point, instigated by Joan's solitary act, grew all the more profound as the days unfolded. On the surface, Keller Sons continued its usual operations, proposals sent, contracts signed, teams busy with plans, but an undercurrent of transformation reshaped the company from within. Members of the planning department, once quick to dismiss outsiders, became known for a new brand of humility and inclusion that surprised even the most skeptical veterans. Joan's presence resonated deeply, each gesture and word accumulating quietly into a lasting influence. Gone were the mornings of silent anonymity. Now, as she walked the polished corridor, her very arrival was greeted with smiles and nods of respect. Marcus regularly sought out her judgment when tackling data issues, aware of the keen eye that had saved the project. Clara, recognizing Joan's thoughtful approach, invited her for discussions not only on analytics, but on workplace cooperation and personal resilience. Soon after the project's rescue, Mr. Matthews requested Joan to meet privately in his office. He described how the company valued integrity and insight, and how she embodied both. With deliberate care, he outlined an offer for Joan, a position as junior analyst with individual mentorship, and the chance to learn the company's more complex systems. The promotion was not merely a reward for one lucky guess, but a recognition of her consistent wisdom and the depth of her experience. Initially, Joan was apprehensive. She remembered how people often doubted her, how the shift from her former career to maintenance had challenged her sense of self. Yet encouragement from her colleagues made a difference. Marcus shared stories of his own setbacks. Clara insisted that Joan's intuition was already reshaping their team. The specialists who had once ignored her now enthusiastically nominated her for the new position. Reluctantly at first, then with genuine anticipation, Joan agreed. The transition revealed further layers of her expertise. Joan soon became known throughout the floor for spotting discrepancies in accounts and suggesting organizational improvements. With every solution, she demonstrated a knack for preventing the small errors that, left unchecked, could escalate into major failures. Staff from other departments began consulting her informally, seeking advice not just on formulas, but on the broader question of how to foster an environment where every viewpoint mattered. Joan's humility set the tone. Rather than leading with authority, she encouraged open dialogue. At weekly meetings, her voice wrapped around careful questions that challenged assumptions and invited reflection. Clara observed that team members, inspired by Joan's journey, had started seeking out quiet voices in every room, not just the loudest or most senior. The ripple effect reached new hires, who quickly adapted to an atmosphere where listening and learning were prized above rank. The story of Joan's breakthrough was told and retold, gradually spreading beyond the 6th floor. HR invited her to share her experience at company-wide seminars on teamwork and personal growth. Matthews mentioned her in conversations with executives, using her journey as a catalyst for rethinking how Keller Sons nurtured talent. Joan, never eager for attention, offered practical advice on mentoring, communication, and building trust. Over time, her influence extended even further. Joan helped pilot a project where employees rotated roles for a day, giving everyone a chance to see the business from new perspectives. Morale improved as staff discovered previously hidden strengths and realized that solutions often came from places most unexpected. The company's reputation grew, attracting new clients and partners eager to learn from their model of collaborative innovation. Joan found fulfillment not in public accolades, but in each day's honest effort. She took pride in helping colleagues find success and meaning, remembering the sense of invisibility that had once colored her own world. From time to time she glanced out the window at the morning city, savoring the view, the laughter, the knowledge that, in her own way, she had made a mark that would endure long after any spreadsheet was archived. Within the walls of Keller Sons, Joan Miller became more than a legend. She was a symbol of possibility, resilience, and grace, a reminder that no wisdom is ever wasted, no voice too small, and no person beyond the reach of recognition and respect. Her story inspired a new culture, one that echoed from boardroom to breakroom, shaping the company for generations to come.